Leadership. Good afternoon, everyone. It was a great honor to welcome to the Capitol what we consider to be the president of Venezuela.
You know what's funny about that? Nancy Pelosi couldn't even get that out with a straight face. How long has Nancy Pelosi been in politics? How long has she had to come out with positions that she know or say things that she know were not entirely true or just was politicized language? And nevertheless, even she couldn't get it out of her mouth in straightforward terms that this man that wasn't elected to a pie shop is the interim president of Venezuela. Because he's not. The key point here is that despite the United States, despite Western powers folding into the United States demands, Juan Guaido is not the president of anything. Juan Guaido, at this point, if I'm not mistaken, is nothing. He might have been part of the assembly at one point, but at this point, Juan Guaido is a failed coup leader. He has tried multiple coups, all of which have failed. At one point, he went out screaming that he was an interim president. At another point, he had all of these military people supposedly riding around in trucks. They were apprehended pretty quickly. Most recently, there was a coup that was signed into a private company. So a private company, Silvercore, run by a gentleman named Goudreau, basically pinned the contract with opposition leaders in Juan Guaido to hire thick-neck, long-beard mercenaries to go into the country by speedboat coming through Colombia and go through and kill and capture as many Venezuelans as necessary in order to topple the Maduro government, at which point Maduro will be killed or captured. Now, this was taken down pretty quickly, actually. There were two Americans, Special Forces Green Beret gentlemen, in addition to several Venezuelans that were part of this particular escapade. Maduro rounded up all of these people, paraded them in front of the television, showing the U.S. passports to the people to which he captured, the two Americans. Also, if I'm not mistaken, there were like 60 people that had been captured. But basically, Maduro did a roundup. The Venezuelan military apprehended these people pretty quickly before they could cause any havoc. If you want to know why Juan Guaido is not popular and why Maduro was able to withstand all of these coup attempts and one assassination attempt by drone, basically Juan Guaido was willing to sign a contract with a private company going into his country and killing Venezuelans, as many as needed to, creating all sorts of havoc and chaos, creating almost a potential civil war in their pursuit of trying to take down Maduro. Immediately, in creating this chaos and this havoc as they hit one military base after the next, what would the United States' perspective be? Trump, just like Obama did with Syria, just like Obama did with Libya, said there's an uprising in Venezuela and we need to give all the aid and assistance that we can to the freedom-loving fascists that are trying to take down the government of Venezuela. They would call them rebels. They would call them pro-democracy protesters. All of those things would take place when the real bare bones reality is a secret mission to invade Venezuela and create all sorts of chaos to make it look as if there was some kind of uprising in the country with the notion and the idea of toppling Maduro. They signed this into a contract. They signed this into a contract. Juan Guaido, all of his failure is finally catching up with him. And the other opposition leaders, because understand, the opposition is not one group. The opposition is multiple groups. It's just so happened that Juan Guaido became the figurehead for this particular opposition group. He's the one that can sell his country out faster than pretty much any of the other opposition leaders. And so, considering he's willing to take a submissive position to the United States, if it indeed allows him to be in power and the other opposition leaders to be in power, well, Guaido's their guy. Well, the opposition is tired of his failures. They're tired of going all of these years with him having one failed attempt after the next and being embarrassed one time after the next. If Juan Guaido was in any other country, Juan Guaido would have been shot for treason. But the difference becomes, because the United States is backing him, the U.S. is looking for any precursor in order to get more involved in Venezuela than it has been. Meaning, from the standpoint of extreme policy, the extreme that the Trump administration can legitimately justify, even though I don't think it's legitimate at all, is a tweak beyond the Obama policy. Obama called them a concern or a security risk to the United States, Trump takes that up a notch and go, not only are they a security risk to the United States, we need to actively do something about it since they are a security risk to the United States, in which course they put all sorts of sanctions and everything else. However, military intervention, whether it's assisting the Colombians and the Brazilians and the other countries, the patsy nations that are around that country, have been somewhat off the table outside of these type of escapades, leaving this to Guaido. But it becomes extremely clear that Guaido is working in the interest of the United States, showing even communications between Guaido and the United States. So despite Guaido being basically a traitor, Guaido is untouchable, because if he's touched, the U.S. may get further involved. But that doesn't necessarily stop Maduro from rounding up other people who are around Guaido. And those people, for the most part, that have been trying for these escapades have utterly and entirely failed. Guaido himself is being blamed. Welcome. Oh, by the way, not just being blamed, they want him replaced. Guaido, you're fired. I'm going to show you what I found to be mind-blowing, but we say it in our press like it's nothing. I mean, we're basically talking about somebody who is a traitor to his country, a traitor to his race, a traitor to his, well, I don't know, his class. And it's not even his race, because there's a difference between lighter skinned Venezuelans versus darker skinned Venezuelans. I guess I'm making the point, traitor to his country. And we talk about it as if it's the most casual thing in the world. Well, if the exact same thing happened in the United States, we will be calling for that person's head. Juan Guaido, opposition wants him replaced. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you, the opportunity that you're allowing me to do it. So this came out, Venezuelan analysis, but it was also released through Bloomberg. After the failed coup attempts, they want him out. Opposition leaders have lobbied Washington to change the Venezuelan policy and replace Juan Guaido as head of the anti-government bloc. Bloomberg cited sources, anonymous sources Friday, claiming that the opposition lawmakers have contacted the State Department to request a change of direction, even leadership. Several sources told the wire service that they should return to talks with the Maduro government, including regarding parliamentary election schedule for this year. If you are Maduro, you do not want to have those elections. The elections are a pivot point that can allow destabilization in the government because power is up for grabs. Look at what they did in Honduras when they got Evo Morales out. An election, everything was legit. Morales wins by 10 points. Imagine for the moment, if somebody in this country wins an election by 10 points, that's a landslide. And yet they were still able to get him out based on pressure from Western governments with a bogus claim that there was some malfeasance. I'm making the point that the same thing happened in Venezuela at the beginning of all this nonsense, or at the semi-beginning of all this nonsense, at the very least with the Trump administration and going back into Obama. Opposition lawmakers likewise stressed that planning needs to be moved from Washington to Caracas, arguing that the Trump electoral calculus vis-a-vis Florida is driving the administration's Venezuelan policy. The internal challenges to Guaido have increased in the wake of a failed coup attempt in early May. A 60 paramilitary force organization organized by the United States operations veteran Jordan Goudreau and retired Venezuelan Major General Cliver Alcala was quickly neutralized when attempting to disembark on Venezuelan shores. Couldn't happen to a better person. Couldn't happen to a better person. And I have to be honest, I don't necessarily know what will be policy difference in regards to Joe Biden and Donald Trump if Joe Biden got in that office. Joe Biden's policy towards Iran didn't seem like it was going to change all that much, despite the fact he was in the Obama administration when they started the JCPOA, and Biden was supposedly supportive of the JCPOA. From the standpoint of what is taking place in Venezuela, my argument is Venezuela is none of our business. We should not be sanctioning that country. Hands off. None of our business. Nevertheless, that is not our policy towards Venezuela. And we have tried one coup attempt after the next. So the question becomes, does Juan Guaido get replaced? How weird is it that a country is engaging with our State Department in the United States, completely separate country, saying you need to replace our opposition leader? Wow. And nobody looks at that and says, wait a minute, that sounds like you are working with a foreign agency in order to take power in your own country. Man, we were bitching and moaning about Russia supposedly toppling our government with a 9/11 event or a Pearl Harbor event for a hack that never took place. This guy is directly working with the United States government to try to take power and topple the government of Venezuela. And our press doesn't look at that as being weird, strange, or anything else. It's so bizarre. And yet here we are. At the very least, however, the opposition is looking for a replacement, and they are trying to get rid of Guaido. Could not happen to a better person. Like, share,